We are moving right along. All right, item number 6. Brian, that's to you. Welcome to the front row.
So thank you. The purpose of this item is to take a look at the current reimbursement policy for board members who are also members of the defined benefit or cash balance program. The last time it was, under your policy, there is a prospective reimbursement for employers that you decide in your July meeting. Current policy it sets forth certain amounts, percentages based upon the level of service by the affected board member. And those amounts were last revisited in 2011. And they were based upon a survey of the affected board members, but the scope of the survey was limited to specifically board meetings, travel, review of board items, and did not include many of the other duties that members of the defined benefit and cash balance board members need to engage in. You had an interesting presentation this morning, talked about IT oversight and talked about the increasing workload of board members, and that is being increasingly recognized. The important distinction here is the statute requires reimbursement for the time that these affected board members have to spend to attend the duties expected to be performed by the person. And that is different than the other board members who are not elected by constituencies and stakeholders and do not deal with the constituencies that are necessarily required by the elected board members. We've seen across the river our friends over at CalPERS, they've, for some of their board members, they've gone to 100% reimbursement, employer reimbursement. I looked at it and I think there should be a modest adjustment. And I think I'm recommending that included with the modest adjustment is that we take a more detailed look on the actual duties that are being performed by the affected board members. That we make sure that we have, that we capture all those activities and bring that back to you, and then see if we want to adjust the policy further based upon the actual hours that are expended and the actual categories of duties that these particular board members are expected to be performed. So the proposal before you is to revise the policy before the July meeting, when you'll make a decision based upon the service of the individual affected board members. In other words, what committees they participate in, which ones they chair. So there's a suggestion at the end of this item on what those adjusted amounts would be. I'm suggesting a 10% adjustment up to reflect the increasing complexity of the work that's been building over the last 6 years. So that's the proposal that's before you.
Okay, we'll open that up for discussion with Brian. Is there any questions? Joy?
Thank you, Brian. I have a couple questions. So I think your proposal is to incorporate a 10% increase in reimbursement, but you're not, it looks like you're not proposing 10% above the current rate, but you're proposing to add 10% to the existing percentages.
That's correct.
So take 50 to 60.
10% across the board for each of the categories.
Okay. So we just want to clarify that, because when I look at 10% increase in reimbursement, I think it's 10% of 50%, which would only be 5%. Yeah, so anyway, sorry, I just
Well,
needed.
thank you for clarifying
Needed to clarify the
that.
math on that. And then I think my other question is, and then I think you're proposing doing a further analysis of this based on surveying the board members who are eligible for reimbursement to look at the duties they're performing, both as part of their role on the board, constituent outreach, travel, education. I guess I just want to make sure that that survey adequately captures the duties and time necessary for them to sort of fully meet the responsibilities that they have, because I don't want to get caught in a situation where we're surveying them and they are indicating this is the time they currently spend, but the time they currently spend on some of those duties may be limited by the balance they currently have to strike between their service to their district and their, the compensation they have. So I think I just like to make sure that the survey captures, the time necessary to really accomplish their duties as opposed to what they're able to accomplish, given the current structure.
Excellent point. Yes, we will do that.
Okay.
Michelle?
I think she articulated both my question and my consideration. I would also just add, in addition, just making sure that if we can, to reflect, the constituencies in which they serve and making sure that it adequately reflects both what they do and what I'm sure that they would like to do as in their role as a board member as well. And with that, I would move approval of the recommendation.
It's been moved by Michelle and seconded by Nora.
Wait.
I have one person left in line, so Karen, go ahead.
Well, I concur with both previous speakers, but is 60% enough? You know?
It may not be. I think the sense is that it's not, but we want to, the rest of the board, we want to make sure that we're appropriately exercising your fiduciary duty. So I wanted to make sure that we had a record, that we really took a look at these items and with particularity and made a record before we came back with a higher recommendation. But your sense is correct. I don't think 60% will end up being the final number.
Eric?
Just a practical component to and acknowledge that I am the person that's affected by this. I am mindful that I'm speaking to an issue that personally affects me currently in this situation. I clearly won't vote on this issue, but I just, as a practical matter, I just want to point out that that 55% in terms of how a school district has to manage that. It's not about me, but it's how a school district manages it. It's really in point twos as they structure their calendars. It's hard to place someone at 45, 55%. So if you think about a school day, a high school teacher teaches 5 periods and has this prep period as his or her 6th period. So that would be like 2.5 periods or something. So it'd be better to just round it up to 60%. The actual cost value to that is about $5,000 to go to roughly on somebody's total comp, that's $100,000, about $5,000. But it means a lot to that school district as to how they're planning to fill their spot, right? They know they have someone that's 0.6 release. They've got to fill 2 teaching slots, 2 periods a day. So just something. So I don't want to amend something that's going to affect me because I want to be above board on all of this. But I want to bring it to people's attention that maybe someone else may want to, including the staff.
You're an expert witness on this, so I think we need your input. Plus, I do think the effect on the school districts is something to consider.
It's
I know
huge.
that there's a staffing
They get
consideration as
reimbursed,
well.
They get reimbursed.
The
They
district gets
It's a
reimbursed.
Yeah.
Yes.
The district gets reimbursed,
District gets
and it's
reimbursed.
coming out of the fund.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Sharon, in light of what Harry said, do you have, I know you're on here to speak, but is it the same time issue
It's
with
sort of
you?
related, but then I guess I just want to.
So can you address what it is for community college?
Right, that's what I was gonna mention that, and to Karen's point, our districts are reimbursed from the fund. I think this issue, again, I have the same disclaimer that Harry does, I won't vote on this, it affects me. But I will say, I think one of the complexities of being an elected board member is the communication with our employer. and the expectation that our employer has for when we're at our school or at our district and when we're not, and just sort of being a good steward of the different hats that we wear and having clear communication and having integrity for, what we're getting paid for work we're doing at our district. And I will say for the community college, and I've learned a lot actually K through 12 talking to Dana and hearing her stories about trying to find subs. In our world, it's about a class load at community colleges. So you teach, in my discipline, communication studies, you teach 5 3-unit classes for 2 semesters, and that's my full-time job. And so when I was, what was I doing? When I was getting a 0.45, our district didn't know how to pay me that. So they paid me a 0.4. And I just that was because our SAP system doesn't know how to process these weird assignments. And so I guess I would echo the same. The issue around having a round number or an even number is a big deal for us in terms of getting accurate remuneration, because our districts they just don't know how to talk in this language. They talk in 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8. So however that gets shuffled out, that's just a concern.
Right. Karen?
So then, in the current way that you get compensated, I guess is a better word for it, is it working? Was it working? Or did you get shorted?
I got shorted. I guess
Harry?
this is public session, sorry, LACCD, but yeah, I mean, I've been getting a 0.4 instead of a 0.45, because they don't know how to do a 0.05, because
I
it's
understand that.
complicated,
So
but yeah.
that's how this current one is, not, and the recommended amounts that are here, is that the same problem?
The 55, I think what I'm hearing
the same problem,
my colleagues
right?
say
It's
is
the
the
same
55 and the
problem.
45 are still an issue.
Right.
If it could go to an even number, that would work much better for the.
And I think the other issue is just, I think it is a little wonky with the different roles. I think some way of articulating that in a different way.
Right.
Because we all, I think, have different roles and different leadership positions and different things that we do on behalf of the board. So a way to not hamstring it as much would be helpful.
Because
However,
to go forward, not to say that you won't, but there could be that you won't be those officers.
that's right.
Correct?
That's right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yep.
So there is a
sure.
possibility to address, well, there's 2 things that occur to me as I hear the affected board members speak. One is that part of the analysis that staff should bring back is to address this additional layer of issues. And then at that point, and I think I mentioned it in the write-up, is perhaps to consider just a cap and give the flexibility under the policy for the affected board members to demonstrate, to provide that documentation to justify the amount. Don't separate them into different duties, just have that for the affected board members under the policy, and have a cap, say up to 80%.
How do you do that, though? How do you do that? To get ready for this meeting, since I was a new board member, I just arbitrarily started writing down who I met with, how many hours I spent looking at the agenda, and I have a whole list. So is that what we would like the affected board members to do?
We could do that, that's,
No, that's crazy. That's crazy, because I was diligent in doing this, and I only did it for this meeting, because I just wanted to know my
That's great.
baseline, I wanted to know, based on how much paper I was getting, and who I had to talk to, and who I had to meet, how I had to prepare, and that was just me. I was no chairperson, I was no vice chairperson, I didn't have a committee, and it was just me. And that's how much time I spent on this particular agenda. So for the people that were in leadership positions, that's an inordinate I can't even say it right.
Inordinate?
Yeah, that's what I want to
lot.
say. A lot of time. And to document each thing, that would be like what an attorney has to do, you know? So, right?
In that case, I feel your pain, and I wouldn't want to go, I don't want to go back to that.
No, but I mean, I hope I'm saying it right, so.
Harry?
Thank you, Ms. Yamamoto.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like for it to be reflected that, from my perspective, the elected teachers should never, emphasize never, be fully released from their duties at a school site. If it's 20%, if it's 30%, whatever that number is, from my perspective, we should never not have direct contact with our members and with why we went into education to begin with.
Absolutely.
It is easy to lose sight of what this is all about and be seduced by all of it. Speaking for myself, I hope I never have that happen to me, and hold me accountable to that. We must always remember who we represent, why we are here, and what this job is all about. It's not about any of us sitting around this dais. It's about the hundreds of thousands of teachers who have elected 3 people solely to protect their retirement security, and the hundreds of thousands of people like Ms. Yamamoto and Loretta Tottenberg. And whether it's 50%, 60%, 80%, I don't know what it is, but I know what the mission is. And a lot of it, I think, also reflects on the relationship that changes with people in different positions in school districts. I can work around 60%, 50%. I can make it work now somehow because of the situation. But I know Madam Chair is driving 240 miles to come to a board meeting, and she's teaching 7 or 8 different grade levels, kids with special needs, and driving 240 miles to get to a meeting at a stage in her career where she deserves to be able to, from my perspective, to appropriately do this work and to be the leader we expect her to be, to have the amount of time that's necessary for her to do that job. And if you do a cost-benefit analysis of it, it's a penny well spent. And so enough about that. We should always stay connected with our members and the kids.
Thank you, Harry. Nora?
So I just need clarification. So my understanding was that there was going to be a survey, and then from that information that you gather, you're going to come back and present to the board. Because I do think it's extremely important that the people that are going to be impacted, and not them as individuals, but as representatives of the seats that they serve in, to get their feedback and their information. And it might be an interesting sort of piece to get from them, like, so who else do you need to talk to so that we can better understand what are the intricacies of this, so that we can have a policy moving forward that is, that's fair. So I'm not sure why we're going too much into the weeds right now. It seems like we should kind of step back and ensure that you have all these pieces so that you're able to do an assessment that brings back a policy that's really reflective of what the real needs of this particular policy would be.
I think that's consistent with the motion that's on.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I understood. I just got sort of confused. Okay, thank you.
Julie?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to recommend that I think broader discussion of this issue sounds warranted, and really taking a look at everybody's responsibilities. But in light of the fact that there appeared to be issues, current issues with people being underpaid, and my mom's a junior high teacher. I had never thought of, breaking up the day in terms of periods, but it really does make quite a bit of sense. Potentially, we could take the first 2 categories, one of which for the board chair is at 60 and the investment committee chair is at 55, and just raise the 55 to 60, and then take the 45% and raise that to 50, so that people aren't being potentially underpaid, and then have a broader dialogue with regard to what makes sense over the long run. But it does pain me to hear that people are engaging and really putting forth their effort on this endeavor and potentially being underpaid. That doesn't feel as if it's the right policy to pursue.
So before I move on to, well, would you want to have that be a friendly amendment to Michelle's motion?
Yes.
Michelle, are you willing to accept that as a friendly amendment?
I would, noting that it's not the final number, I guess, because otherwise the differentiation that was anticipated in the policy is no longer there. So, just mention, so yes, long answer, sure.
So I think we can do that, as long as you accept it.
Accepted.
And who was the seconder?
I did.
Nora, are you okay with that? All right, so that would then be the motion before us. Steve, can you read that again to us, please?
So I have the motion, as I have it, would be on TRB 99 is the recommended percentages. So the motion is to move to those percentages except as amended, which would be to raise the 45% reimbursement for a contract for a board member to 50, and then to raise the 55% for the investment committee chairperson to 60.
So it would be 60, 60, 50, and 50.
Right. So,
And I just clarify, and still the other part. of
And
the
to have it
right,
come back
right, it's
with-
just changing the percentages in the recommendation. And I also want to make sure that everyone's clear, it's not necessarily a person that's being paid, it's the reimbursement that goes to the districts.
district.
So it's the district that ends up being most effective. All right, Paul?
So, I understand it's a district, so I'm not talking about Sharon, I'm talking about her employer. But given Sharon's position, she would be at 50% here, right, under these categories?
Yes.
Because although she's vice chair of the board, she would be there at 50% because she's a committee chairperson, and I think Sharon told us that her district can't handle numbers except in 20%.
Maybe I can talk to them again and see if they can do 0.5.
Well, because I know
That is
that
easy.
what we're doing here is something I think is temporary because we're going to be revisiting it, right? I mean, we're gonna be revisiting this very quickly, and I'm completely supportive of, I do think we have to have, you know, we need some feedback about what the duties are and what the commitments are before we finalize this. I don't wanna just, you know, go up to, you know, some much higher number without some basis for doing that. But if we're doing something in the interim, it seems to me, first of all, that I don't see with Sharon's duties that she's probably doing a whole lot less than Harry and Dana. It's much more workable, and it's a temporary thing. So I would just make the friendly amendment that somebody who is, I don't know how to put it, but somebody who is vice chair of the board and chair of a committee, or, you know, or something like that, and again, it's just until we revisit this very soon.
So Paul, are you saying that would also be raised to 60? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that somehow we describe Sharon's,
So
the duties that Sharon
so-
has, without putting Sharon's name in there and assign 60%, knowing we're gonna be revisiting this all in a more systematic, evidence-based
Right,
process
right.
very soon.
I just want to make sure that I captured what you were trying to do.
Yes.
So Michelle, I'm going back to you.
Amendment, and also just one more piece to add, just to make sure, I think it's become abundantly clear, but just as in all the surveying, making sure that we're talking with the employers on what makes
Yes.
sense to have a reasonable recommendation to begin with, so. yeah,
We'll
thank you.
do that.
Right, whether they can accommodate something
Right,
other than
right, we can make
20%
these
increments,
decisions,
right.
but if it can't be
Right.
accommodated, then what's the
Yes.
point?
So we need to.
Nora,
know
are you
that
okay with that?
independently.
Okay, we now have a new.
So
Well, it's not necessarily new, but with
60,
another
60,
amended.
50.
60, 60, 60, 50.
Going
Yes,
down the rest,
60, 60, 50.
50.
60, 60, 60, 50.
Right,
All right.
360s.
Lynn?
Thank you. I just wanted to speak in favor of the amended resolution. I appreciate the work that all three of you do, running the board and the committees, investment committee, running the board, vice chair, appeals. And given all of the engagement and outside work that you do with the stakeholders, I think that makes a big difference in leadership of the board. So we would support this as well too, with the stipulation that we're going to go forward and do the review in the coming year.
All right. All right. Ed, if you want to get back to a mic, I'm going to go ahead and go to Jennifer. Is he still out there? Did he have to go? Okay. Jennifer, we'll go with you then.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Baker, California Teachers Association. I'd like to encourage you to consider amending the amended version of the motion that's been made for a number of reasons. I think it's very clear that since 2011, when the board chewed on this last time, the world has really changed, and the complexity of the issues that we're dealing with have changed dramatically, not only within CalSTRS, but within all the stakeholder organizations as well as the legislature, and that really needs to be taken into consideration. A few major issues that all of the board members, but particularly the elected board members, face now are the implementation of AB 1469 and specifically how it's impacting negotiations at both our K-12 and community college districts across the state. It's made conversations much more difficult and complex, and it has necessitated an increased need for the elected representatives of this board to actually have more direct conversation with stakeholder organizations. You add to that the complexity of investment issues, whether we're talking about engagement, divestment, et cetera. It's completely changed the kind of conversations that have taken place. I would encourage you to consider not only surveying the elected board members, but to also survey all of the stakeholder organizations as well, because I can tell you that the stakeholder organizations expect to be able to have contact with their elected representatives, just like you would. This is democracy. You expect to be able to have conversations. If the elected representative of the board is not available because they've already reached capacity, you are actually impeding the ability for stakeholder organizations of whom these three individuals are representing. You're impeding their ability to actually have conversations about board business and what's going on. And that can make relations complicated because they're not going to hear what's actually happening in the field. And while staff has access to what's going on at CalSTRS, as the electeds know, it can often be a completely different world out there. And I'm absolutely sure that the constitutional representatives on the board can clearly understand when you go out and you're meeting with those whom you are elected by, you realize it can often be much more complex in the real world. So I can tell you that the lack of access, not because the elected board members don't want to have access, has made it more complicated, especially educating our members. I know I'm speaking for CTA, but this has been something that I've been discussing. AXO and I were just having a discussion about how can we actually have collaborative conversations on engagement and divestment and take this on the road for labor and management, and how can we make sure that we're bringing our elected representatives to all of those road shows so that school and community college districts better understand. So we would encourage you to actually move up to 80% now, and the reason is there are not enough opportunities between now and your next board decision making time on this to actually be able to engage with those that you're going to be representing. So maybe you might want to consider doing 80% for a year and then evaluate whether that's the right number, because you're not going to be able to tell until they have an opportunity to do all the things that they're expected to do by those that elected them.
Thank you, Jennifer. Ed?
With CTA and EA retired, I just want to echo what has been said and give you an example, concrete example. We were very fortunate when Dana was on the board. She had the release time. And she
CTA
was
board.
always able to come to the retired board, you give a report, and then made was at state council and had visibility. And then on Saturday, Harry would be there. But when I announced that we now have a person that represents the interests of retirees on the board, Karen's appointment, the first thing was asked of me, when can we have her down here? That was the first thing that was asked. I think we sometimes lose fact that these are basically volunteers all up here, you know? And I recognize the necessity to stay in tune what Harry was saying with the people that you're teaching. That's what you were hired for. But you were elected by a group of people to represent their interest. And for you not to have that opportunity to get out and have that input, member engagement is the byword today. And you can't have member engagement if you isolate yourself. And geography should not be an inhibitor or what you teach or what you teach. So my concern, because we went through this same stuff when we got collective bargaining with the California Teachers Association. We had to fight with districts to release our members, and we had to get special legislation in order to have that happen. It's an important aspect of what's happening. And if you had to pay each one of you for what you're really worth, if we had to do that, it would cost us a lot of money. Okay? So this is a good deal. 80% is a good investment. I hope you support that. Thank you.
Maggie?
So that almost just slipped right out of my mouth. But I'm speaking as a past chair of CTA's retirement committee and also as a leader in one of the largest locals in the state of California. I, at one time, was president of Elk Grove Education Association, and we only believe that you have to be in the classroom if you're going to be a leader and represent teachers. So several of you have already said, I never want to see an elected leader of CalSTRS full-time release. It's not something I believe in, and most teachers, if you're out of the classroom, why are you out of the classroom? Did you not want to be a teacher? We are very suspicious of people who want full-time release. So I appreciate that comment. Also knowing that when you're not full-time released, you're doing many more jobs in a very limited amount of time. Harry mentioned that .2s are what our districts live by. Having a half-time release is fine, but having anything that is in between a .2 is very difficult to deal with. Our calendars are different than CalSTRS calendars. So when you're looking at revisiting this in November and possibly making changes in November, you are going to cause conniptions in our district offices, because trying to find somebody to fill in mid-year is not good for kids. It is also not good for our districts. So I just caution you in terms of that point. If you were to make a decision, make it now. I would recommend being at 80%. And let's treat these people as professionals. If they don't need 80%, they will tell us they don't need 80%. But I think it really depends on the person that's in the position. We often talk about Harry and Dana and Sharon, but someday it's not going to be them. It's going to be somebody different, who's in a different local, who's in a different distance from here, who has a different job as a teacher. And we should allow them to make those decisions and give the feedback to staff to say, you know what, I really don't need 80%, I'm good with 60%. But if we give that max of 80%, we allow enough flexibility to happen. And I just forgot my last point. Dang it. I know what it was. Every dollar is very important to everybody, especially when we're looking at a pension fund. But when we're talking about reimbursing release time for these individuals, this is what we like to use. It's budget dust. it's a very, very small amount to compensate our districts for the great deal of amount of work that these individuals do that's far beyond what a 1.0 FTE is at a school district. We don't compensate them enough. We don't compensate any teacher enough because we all work much more than what we get paid to do. So I would encourage you to amend the amendment to allow to go up to 80%, and let's leave it for the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. All right, the motion before us is to change the percentages that are found on page 99, to leave the chairperson at 60, investment committee chair would go to 60, the committee chairperson would go to 60, and then it would be 50 for a board member without any of those positions. Is there any further discussion?
Oh, wait a minute.
Go ahead, Karen.
Did you include the vice chair? Was that on the
We could put-
amended
We could include that on the
chair?
committee chair, vice chair, committee chair.
Maybe
Okay.
Okay.
And/or.
And/or, okay.
That works. And in that motion is also the reporting that would then come back in November, correct?
Yes.
All right. Nora?
That's what I just need a clarification on. So whatever motion we make today goes into effect when?
No,
Immediately?
reimbursement is July.
The policy would be amended today.
Uh-huh.
And then in July, when you meet, you'll actually apply the percentages to the people.
Okay, and then
We'll look at it.
we'll look at it again.
In November.
Right now,
In
the plan is
November.
to look at it in November, get input. I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right. Steve, you're clear on what our motion is? Board members, you're clear on what our motion is? Any further discussion?
Wait, what? Because it's a motion on the floor. I'm not ready. He's going on
We good?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was just trying to.
It's okay. I don't want to move ahead if you're not okay with it.
I'm fine.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. And thank you to all of you out there that said really nice things to us. We appreciate it. Sharon?
I just wanted to say that too. This is a humbling job, and it's just an honor to serve on this board. So I really appreciate the conversation and the kind words. And I think last night we were out to dinner and talking about how I feel so blessed that we have a full board, 12 of us, and all the different roles that we play. But it's really a gift and an honor to serve on this board. And so I just wanted to say thank you for getting me here.
Harry?
Not to beat a dead horse, but I, at one point in my career, got too far removed from the classroom, and it was a big mistake. And getting back onto a school campus was probably the best thing that's happened to me in the last short period of time.
I love being back at school. All righty. Part of the reason why we've been talking about this is because so much of our job has changed. So not only has it changed for us, but it's also changed for the other appointees on the board. And it's been quite a while since we've taken a look at the reimbursement for the persons that are sitting on the board that have been appointed by the governor. And so I would respectfully ask that, and it seems like November would be a good time for it, so that perhaps we need to take a look at, you guys made me emotional.
I know.
That taking a look at the reimbursement they get also.
The stipend for.
Because it's not just our job that has increased, it's also all of you too, so
We'll
can we
take-
do that, please?
Yes, we'll take that as an information request, bring it back.
Thanks. All right, was there any question on that? All righty, next item.
Wait a minute, I
Go
just
ahead.
one more thing.
Go ahead, Karen, click in.
Since I'm retired, who's my boss?
Go ahead and click in. Well, no, that's fine. No, you don't have to. All right. So Jack, could you explain what I was talking about? Because maybe,
I'm not
because,
sure.
because I think Karen, because Karen might not know.
Well, for the governor-appointed positions, so for our public representatives, and for your position too, Karen, because the law was changed a couple of years back, there's that $100 per diem that the governor recognizes in his announcements, and so that we would take that request and also talk to the appointments office, because it's really the governor's appointments. Yeah, we will do that.
And you know the time that you've put in yeah, exactly. It's become a lot more complicated for all of us. All righty. Jack.
You ready? You want a break? You ready?
Oh,
Keep going.
God.
Keep going. All right, let's do it.
You're gonna hit me up too.
Let's do it.
All right,
So
go.
we're talking, I'm going to just talk about a couple things in our CEO report. One is on the GRI report, which is our Global Reporting Initiative report. And for Karen and Jerry, this is something maybe you're not followed in your other jobs in life. So I do want to back up a little bit and explain it, because this is truly unusual what we do here with this report. Is Teresa here? Oh, you're the way back there. Teresa Gonzalez, stand up so everyone sees you. Teresa is our lead manager on this report. And she's been technically trained on how to do this. She's not just doing a report for us. Thanks, Teresa. And put this together for us. And I think we have two things on your desk, the report, and as you can see, our communications department has really worked hard to make this a report that someone would want to read. It's not just a bunch of words and things, but it's an enticing document with infographics. And Tom, your photo's in here, I see back here. And there's links and QR codes, and we've tried to use any kind of technology incentive to encourage people to read this. But this is the best, it's our third version of this report, but it's definitely the most wonderful presentation we've had yet. And Teresa works with all of our parts of our organization, and as you can see in the report, works to survey a variety of individuals for it. Hopefully you've got this card, though, on your desk, and I want to make sure you saw this. This should, I mean, sustainability is the foundation of this organization, and you should look at it in this umbrella fashion. When you look at this document, there are three critical pieces we provide you, and they're not just reports. They really dig into deeply the activities of CalSTRS Soul and what we do here. The top of the one is the one I'm going over right now with you. The second report is provided by our investment branch every year on all the investment activities that speak out to sustainability. And the third report is a very special report we did with the Mercer Consulting Group, along with some international pension funds, to really look very specifically how climate change affects this organization's portfolio. So those three together fit well. But I want to speak just about what we call this GRI report today. There's been a lot of criticism. Everybody knows that if you're running a corporation today, there's a very vibrant customer base that wants to hear what you're doing on sustainability. Unfortunately, that has led to a lot of what we call greenwashing, which is really fake information about what corporations are doing to entice customers to think that these products are interesting and good and sustainable, but they don't necessarily have integrity in doing so. So that's how the Global Reporting Initiative became such a backbone of reporting. It initiated with the organization of Ceres, which a lot of you are used to hearing us talk about it, but the controller, Betty Yee, and myself sit on the board of directors of Ceres, and they birthed this reporting initiative some years ago. It became so popular that it spun off as an organization now housed in Amsterdam. And in the United States, over 80% of the S&P 500 now use the GRI format to produce a report. So there's a lot of stuff in here, and you might think that we're just picking stuff out to tell you things about, but it's a very torturous scheme you must use. It's called G4 guidelines. And Teresa has gone through this, and we submit this to the Amsterdam group to look at, to make sure that we actually are doing a report with some assurance, and our internal auditors look at this as well, that we're not just trying to do public relations about CalSTRS, that we do nifty things and grow vegetables out front, but we actually are doing things that are relevant to sustainability. So if you look at the index of this report, it's not what most people think. This is not about how we're recycling day in and day out, although it's in the report. As you look at the language in this report, it's about the governance of the organization. It's about the ethics of the organization. It's about what you just did in the governance committee. It's about our workforce development. It's all the things we talked about people having a good retirement. Those are the elements of sustainability that speak to the heart of this organization's mission. So it takes a while to get people's head around this. And when we talk about sustainability at CalSTRS, we're talking about the core of our mission, delivering pensions in perpetuity to our members. So we're perplexed why we're the only public pension system in America doing a sustainability report that fits GRI guidelines, but we are. But it is, I want to make sure you know this is the gold standard for a corporate department doing reporting on sustainability. In the government, this is just something that has not gained traction in how they think about their business, but it's what we do here. So just a couple things. You know, I loved what Frank Blake said to you yesterday in the investment committee about the inverted pyramid. And, you know, I'd love sometime to show you a presentation we've all seen at the leadership on what's called the Trust Barometer. It is the global survey done in the world by Edelman Public Relations, and it's unveiled at Davos every year. But it goes through trust and how people think about business. Who do they trust? Who are the voices they trust? What do they think about the media? What do they think about the press? What do they think about legislators? What do they think about government? But one of the absolute takeaways for the last 5 years has always been, I hate to say this, but it's coming out of my mouth, but one of the least credible voices is the CEO of the corporation, and the most credible voices are the employees and then stakeholders, your customer base. That's who people listen to when they want it. That's why Yelp is popular. That's why TripAdvisor is popular. And it's not people just telling their story. That's what this report is about. The guidelines from GRI in Amsterdam require us to survey our employees, our stakeholders, our supply chain, all those things to find out what's important around sustainability. So it's not a puff piece about the organization and what we do. You're looking. You were going to say something? No. Okay. All right. So there is a lot in this report. I really hope you get a chance to peek through it because there are things in here you'll learn about the organization we don't get to tell you in the committees. It's not on your work plan. But this is what CalSTRS is about, is what's in this report. So really, if you can, take a look at it. I'm going to show you 2 videos that accompany the report. We're trying to get people interested in different ways of looking at it. But these are the report topics that came to bear from the surveys that Teresa did for us. What was interesting, I do want to flag one of those that all the groups identified as important. Different groups thought different things were important, clearly. The one that hit every single reference group for this was ethics and compliance. Interesting, huh? Interesting. No matter what your vantage point was to the organization, people thought that was an issue of importance. Clearly, if you remember, you're concerned about the financial integrity of this organization, and they were paying people correctly all the time, right? Right. And we all know when there's been ethical transgressions from organizations close to us, that causes enormous damage for years in how they run their business. So I'm pleased to see that. I know Ryan's pleased to see that, you know, that it tells us what we're doing here on our strategic plan fits with what people think we ought to do. If you look at those things, we have initiatives around every one of these categories in our business plan that we're going to talk about next month. So that's fabulous. So we're going to talk next month. I'm going to do a social media report for you. But some of you noticed that we pushed this out with a new communication tool. We actually can tell you we sent out to hundreds of thousands of our email addresses that have captured it. We can tell you how many people clicked the link. We can tell you how many people opened the report. I mean, we've got some wonderful analytic tools around now measuring what we're doing. Notice that this report also won an award of excellence from one of the communication groups in town. So let me just kind of show you 2 videos. Obviously, that's wow, that's big there. I want to show you 2 videos. Wait, all right, start. Go ahead.
Better governance have higher rates of return and lower volatility when compared to their industry peers. As an institution dedicated to serving the retirement needs of California's educators and their beneficiaries for more than 100 years, sustainability is a core part of CalSTR's mission. We've been here since 1913, decades before Social Security was enacted, and plan to remain vital in the next century that lies before us. I believe in strong board governance efforts and the positive impact that's possible when strategic goals align. That's when true and meaningful progress is made. And in my role as a Teachers Retirement Board member, it is part of my fiduciary responsibility to ensure the goals of the board and CalSTRS as an organization are balanced. CalSTRS is making substantial inroads in efforts like carbon-free energy investing and working diligently and responsibly to meet our long-term investment goals for the overall benefit of the fund and the members we serve.
Great, thanks. And before you start the second one, we tried to shoot videos again to reflect the nature of this report from different angles. We've got a video here from Mindy Luber, who's the CEO of Ceres Organization, talking about what she thinks we do as a business. We've got, obviously, the controller speaking as the chair of our governance committee because compliance and ethics came out as one of the top measures. Workforce development, again, one of our key areas in this report. I want to show you a fun video. Yep, you're right over there, good. A fun video from the investments branch. Sure, and some of you have met the interns we use here. I want you to hear the interns talk about CalSTRS. So if we could show this next one, thank you.
Ari Friedman.
Monica.
Jessica Padalina.
Ramon Hernandez III.
Tyler Ma.
Jacob Thompson.
I'm an economics major at UC Davis. I perked up when it said investment internship on the job posting.
Stumbled upon this internship and I was just like, why not?
Coming into CalSTRS, I never really noticed how much I was going to learn until actually being here.
They really want to present an opportunity for the students not only to work in STRS, but in other investments careers in general.
We come in kind of thinking we might know a little bit about investments from school, but that first day you really understand you know nothing.
We tend to look at what's going to happen in the long run and not just the day-to-day, month-to-month, even year-to-year things.
They really want us to grow and learn, and they're not that kind of business person you think of in your mind or you see in the movies. They're real people.
We're getting to do real tangible projects that'll help us in the working world.
My first work experience, so it wasn't what I was expecting, and so it exceeded, everything I thought it would be.
But when you actually get to sit down in it and see the 4 monitors in front of you, you get to see people on Bloomberg and all the, the whole 9 yards. You're really there, and you're just like, oh my God, wow, like, it kind of makes you think, like, am I ready for this?
So who do you like better, Jim Cramer or Chris Ailman?
Chris, for sure. What's great about him is that he just wants you to be open and be yourself around him, and helps us just learn, that much better.
Getting to know Chris, he's so generous, big-hearted, very intelligent.
Chris is really cool, and he's pretty exciting. He's a funny guy.
You always realize you can learn so much from him.
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
I think I'll take away a lot of all the new relationships that I've developed with people, all of the new knowledge that I've gained from everyone in investments.
The whole learning experience here has been amazing.
I worked at CalSTRS, or intern at CalSTRS, and it was the best time of my life so far, yeah.
Did you ever make any personal calls on a CalSTRS telephone?
No.
What was that? He asked if they had ever made a personal phone call on the CalSTRS. Is that on our video? Anyway, so you can see the variety of perspectives that we try and bring into this report. And I've said to you this each offsite this happens. We spend a lot of time, all of us on the executive staff, on new employee orientation and making sure people understand the culture we're trying to create here so we have good retention. But this issue around sustainability, especially with the generation of workers we coming into the building, is mentioned over and over again. I am absolutely positive we've got it right, that by making this the foundation of what we talk about here, this is what's going to make everything else work well. And hopefully you can see that all of our strategies in this report, whether it's the facility strategy, the garden out front, which is great, to the serious things that we do with the investment portfolio and corporate governance. They're all displayed in this report, and it's just super job. And again, Teresa, thanks for leading the effort for us through this. Okay?
Don't move. Harry.
I think that was my favorite video.
It was great.
In all the years, that might be right. I think that's my favorite. And the background music. I thought I was in an Indian restaurant in Santa Monica. I was really, as the kids would say, epic. As my daughters would shake their heads and say, Dad, no. No, you're not a hipster. But all kidding aside, I don't think you are trying to create the culture. It's been created. I mean, it's the challenge, I think, as I've said to you a couple of times in communications, is the continuity of that. When faces change and bodies move and, building on it. And it's almost, I almost feel a little awkward about it because we're kind of patting ourselves on the back a little bit. But once in a while, it's, it is good.
Okay.
It's nice to recognize it. This is a government agency, but it sure doesn't feel like one. And that's not that government agencies are bad. It's the best of what government has to offer and what government should be about, essentially people, and building and implementing that which government has a difficult time implementing, which is cultural change and, growth and innovation and forward thinking. And so you've done a good job. You've done a good job. So, and that was a great video, really good. Thanks.
Fabulous. Sharon?
I think the thing that I was reflecting on that video, and I remember that intern, Chris, following you around last summer, right? She was around last summer. And then just Jack with the leadership development that you do on, I just, as an educator, you kind of like seeing, it's fun to be a trustee here and see that actually education happens everywhere. And that's kind of what you're like for students to hang out, and look at 202 or however much we have now, $1 billion, and be able to kind of be a part of that. My brother, Dale, came to visit and met Chris like 5 years ago when I first got elected. His daughter, my niece, Christina Hendricks, she is going to UC Berkeley this fall. And we went to Cal Day a couple weeks ago, and she said, Sharon, do you think I could get an internship at CalSTARS? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't want to, breach any ethics rules, but all I know is that they do it. And so it's just funny to me that even, kind of she's heard about it from my brother. And so I think that whole mentoring and educating and the next generation, whether it's students at the university or it's our own employees, and always having an eye towards if they start somewhere and maybe that's not a great fit, we move them to somewhere else and you watch them blossom. I just think that kind of education for no wonder people love working here. So it's great.
Absolutely. Lim?
Thank you. Jack, I just want to say thank you. This is a wonderful report, and it's great to have all of the sustainability initiatives going on within CalSTARS, and especially linking it to the other two reports that have come out earlier. And I think that having this out there must make the governance teams their job a little bit easier, because they can actually show our companies that we're invested in that it can be done, and it is being done already.
Absolutely.
So thank you. It's a great job.
Yep. And so, Jack, I want to throw my kudos to staff, too. I think this system has really embraced the different modalities in which we communicate to not only our members, but to the outside world as a whole. And so I really like that we have a printed report that still drives people to our website. So the fact that the things that are in here that are videos, they have the play button on them and things like that. I mean, from Chris doing, short, and his staff doing short videos for us and for outside, that continues this throughout the whole system. I think it's going to be fabulous. And I think it's really awesome that Teresa has put in the very beginning a whole video of her own that says how you get the most out of this document. I think that's a very interesting idea, and I would encourage us to take a look at somebody doing that for all our reports, because then we will get more out of them. So I think that is a really great idea, and I hope we continue that. So
Thank you. That's it.
Way to be
We're taking
innovative.
that idea.
I mean, and across
I
our
already heard
social
the rumble back
platforms.
here. That's okay. Let's do that.
Good idea. So
Thank you.
that was very, very cool. Thank you. All righty.
Can I do the other part now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, the other part of my report is on the customer center and the call center and the correspondence center that's part of it. And Harry just used that phrase 1 second ago, changing faces, and that's what I did want to say here. We have one of our most central senior managers about to retire in hours from when I acknowledge her, Cynthia Steiger. Cynthia has run this customer service center for us for 16 years. And, you know,
Congratulations.
I do want to say a couple things because, you know, most of us that reach a senior level in a job, there's a varying rhythm to our jobs. There's busy times, there's periods where you can reflect and sit back and do things. So you have a real change of temperature throughout your work time. Every one of us in this room has used a call center. We all have opinions about call centers. I could give you the top 10, the worst 10 in a second of what I've experienced in my life. And I've worked at insurance companies where we have lots of experience with answering people that have issues on their health insurance. But when you're running the call center, it's like being in a 100-yard dash. I've never said this to you, but it's like, in my mind, it's being like in a 100-yard dash every day you come to work. There isn't the variance in rhythm. So it's stressful from the day you walk in. And it's also the most measured area of CalSTRS. It's good and bad that comes from that. We can tell you how many seconds everything took place every day, every hour, plan the workload. Joy knows this from her comparable experience at United and how you drill down on that call center and measure it. But the effort it takes to run a call center day in and day out and perform is a tough, tough job to do. Cynthia brought her background. She has a master's degree in management information science. I dug into your background a little bit. And it so fits you, Cynthia, because you brought the analytic framework to this organization. We were always answering phone calls, of course, but when Cynthia took this role, we had just switched our legacy computer system. And Dana, you may remember, the stakeholders certainly remember, it wasn't a pretty moment. We had lots of problems, but it was a time to regroup. And every single year, I've got a list of here, I'm not gonna read them all, it's such a long list of every single year, Cynthia has championed a project in this organization to develop a new information system, a new customer relations system, new business knowledge training council, a new way of developing the employees. Every single year, she was overlaying additional analytic information, reporting, training, ways of improving this call center over time. Now, take a guess. How many calls do you think have been answered in this organization in her 16 years? Well, I know. Okay. Start.
10 calls an hour, that's 80 calls, 80, 1,600, 160,000.
That's good. That's a little high. It's 4.5 million phone calls have been answered of our members over 16 years and 422,553 emails. See, we measure everything, that we know that. But obviously those were answered by her staff. But Cynthia was responsible for providing all that organization around that and making sure that we're getting our job done. And, you know, again, that is the front lines of this business, is doing that work. So I thank you. And also, as she knows so well, I have a strong personal interest in call centers from my insurance days. So I've always had a lot of input for Cynthia, a lot of feedback on performance. It was an area which she and I have communicated on a lot during my 15 years here too. So we've known each other a lot. So again, Cynthia, on behalf of CalSTRS, thank you so much for your career here. All right, I'm going to just close with a sad piece. I'm sorry I'm closing with that, but it's important for our staff and all of us here. We lost an employee who worked in the call center. And so, you know, I've talked a little bit about what it meant working there for you. What's unusual about Stacy, who died from a long illness here just a month ago as an employee here. She worked in our call center the whole time and actually on the front lines answering calls. Call center jobs have high turnover, and, there's just a level of, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional about this. There's just a level of time you can spend with that. So she was on the front lines the whole 10 years in what she did here. Very passionate, won numerous recognitions for what she did here, and just really spoke to the heart of this organization, what she did. I wouldn't normally show you a video like this. This is a video from inside the organization. It's not on our external website. But she was such a lighthearted, obviously I did not work next to her, but I knew her and I said hi to her regularly when I saw her. But she had such a wonderful presentation of herself that fit so well with speaking to our members every day. And it's hard to retain that of 10 years of doing customer service. So we have an internal video where she's the star of it. It's one of her Halloween videos. But I hope you'll okay if I play this for you because it honors her very well. And also you'll see all of our staff that interact with her in it. So she starts the video here, and they're doing a song you all know well. So, yeah. So that was Stacy, and we miss her very much. She, as you can tell, she was part of our family here, and I think that really, you could see that in what she's done here. So we're sorry to lose her. All right.
Okay, now we will take a 10-minute break.
Yeah, really. Oh my God.